I'm Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard, and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
if Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
Hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
Should the DC Universe continue to make films that are connected, or should they branch off and be standalone?
So ever since the fallout of Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, we've been told several times by high executives at DC and Warner Brothers, between Toby Emmerich and of course good old Jeff Johns, that they're going to start working on more standalone type movies, ones that sit by themselves with very little connectivity in the universe. And this is something that's kind of become, I think, a debate between DC fans when it comes to these DCEU movies. Some people want it to be more connected. They want it to build up to that big moment similar to the MCU. Some may just prefer good quality standalone movies with small Easter eggs sprinkled throughout the movie. And that's what we're here to discuss.
Since we're comicbook.com, we're big on the comic book chatter. We have a new Batman in Robert Pattinson. You were once Thomas Wayne, who, of course, in Flashpoint becomes Batman. Is there any chance maybe like you go back to a comic movie or do the Flashpoint Batman or anything like that?
I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, there's a chance if they asked me, I would say yes. I think the Flashpoint story it's my favorite story. I would love to do it. But, you know, DC is DC, and they're, it's a constant. It seems like they're always kind of switching up who's running it and what they're going to do. So hopefully what I'd like to see is a little continuity with DC, have them get on the track, and then, man, if I would be honored and love to do it more than anything.
Obviously, Jeffrey Dean Morgan seems to be a comic book fan. He said that Flashpoint is his favorite story. Something that was kind of telling in this interview is he also says it seems like they're always switching up who's running DC. So as he mentions in the clip, he's talking about continuity and just getting back on track and having a plan. As we just had Birds of Prey, they want to have films, but also want to have them loosely connected and no commercial for the next one, and no real reason to have fans go see these movies. As a fan myself, I would also like to see a little bit more continuity and at least some sort of game plan so we know exactly what we're expecting.
It's kind of some ebb and flow I see between DC fans of what should actually happen here. A lot of the times you see DC fans defending the fact that DC doesn't need to be like Marvel. They don't need to have the lighter tone. They can have a mixed variety tone. They don't need to have 5 solo films building up to the large ensemble film. And I've seen this as an argument for the reason why Shazam and Birds of Prey had a underperforming box office so far. They're not connected, and it's not drawing people back to the theaters. They can just see them whenever they want because it's not building to anything. Yes, there's Easter eggs sprinkled throughout, but even in Shazam, the Easter eggs there are mixed. When you finally do see Cavill Superman, and I put that in quotations because it's not actually Cavill, it's this guy, and when they do present him, they play the John Williams score. So again, it's like this loose connection. You're showing Man of Steel, but you're playing the John Williams score. And of course, Justice League was notorious for this, for bastardizing anything they built, trying to go back to nostalgia.
No, you will not hear a new theme for Batman. You'll hear Batman's theme for Batman.
The Hans Zimmer had score for the last film? Or
no, you'll hear Batman's theme. Batman has only had one theme.
First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face!
This is an article that came out last year from Screen Rant from Thomas Bacon. That's a fantastic name. And it's
delicious.
It's titled, How and Why the DCEU's Original Slate Changed So Much. I'm not going to go over this entire article, but if you scroll to a point, they actually have the slate that was released in 2014 of the films that we were supposed to see. And it talks about Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, obviously Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and then the infamous Justice League Part 1. And then from there, just a total waste, it seems like. We have Flash, Aquaman, Shazam, Justice League 2, Cyborg, and the Green Lantern Corps, which most of those we did not even see, or I'm sure their original version. I would question if Aquaman and Shazam are the films that were initially intended back when this slate was released.
Well, if you just look at Aquaman there, it's dated for July 27th, 2018, not December. So it obviously got pushed back. And then Cyborg was supposed to come out very soon, April 3rd, 2020. It's that abandoned spot on IMDb that everybody thinks is the Snyder Cut. And of course, Green Lantern Corps, which is probably that whole premise has been probably shifted now to the HBO Max concept of what they're going to do with the Green Lantern Corps.
Don't ask me why, but recently I decided to watch our initial video that we had ever released as a YouTube channel / podcast back in the day, and it's atrocious. This is not a plug to go back and watch that, but one of the things that I had noticed when I was listening to it, and it became super depressing, was how much excitement / optimism that we had for this whole universe. We throw in bits and pieces every time we're talking about, oh, Batman and Superman and where they're gonna go from Dawn of Justice, and oh, the future, oh, I'm sure in the next movie with Ben Affleck's Batman. And we mention it so many times over the course of the entire podcast that when you listen back to it in hindsight, it kind of brings you down a little bit. It really makes you go, damn, what could have been, and the excitement that we had to talking about, oh yeah, this is what we're gonna get now, and none of that came true. Recently, my wife and I had watched Avengers Endgame because she had not seen it. That was also another point when I realized, like, man, what could have been on the DC side? And you can say whatever you want about Marvel movies. I have my own gripes about them as well. I mentioned it earlier in this episode, being a commercial for the next one. That is essentially what the Marvel universe is, a commercial for the next movie. I'm not saying that the DC universe needs to follow that template exactly. I feel like they could have spun off of other movies from Batman vs Superman and the Justice League and started building their universe that way. To me, as a fan, I feel gypped. On one side, you get Avengers Endgame that has all of these characters that finally came together in this one epic moment, and on the other side, we still have not had a Man of Steel 2, and it's disappointing. Now, you can have your Joker movie. I absolutely love that. Todd Phillips obviously did a fantastic job. You can have these side movies, but the fact that we do not have a linked universe and we have not yet been able to establish any sort of continuity with any of these movies aside from brief Easter eggs here and there, even in Birds of Prey. And I would love to get to the point where we have the entire Justice League Unlimited type ensemble cast where there's just a crap ton of DC characters and superheroes that we grew up with.
And then you look at the potential, the early goings with the DC universe, and David Ayer has mentioned this at several points about how Suicide Squad was originally kind of conceptualized. Someone posted this mock-up of a parademon head, and he even confirmed it. He said, this is a mock-up parademon head that was 3D printed, and I shot the image with my Nikon, so Nikon gets a nice plug there. David Ayer also responds to a comment saying, agreed, the whole I have to build my machine thing was ridiculous. Her abilities alone were enough of a challenge. Outside of that, I really enjoyed it. Obviously, the person is talking about Suicide Squad, but David Ayer responds, it was supposed to be a boom tube as she was under control of a mother box. All the apocalypse elements were stripped out late in the game. The machine concept was just an attempt to create a ticking clock and a world threat.
You just want to say, fuck you. Oh, fuck you, fuck you.
So again, that continuity that we were all wanting, Suicide Squad would have led up to the eventual Justice League. It was all building up to that Apocalypse somewhere and somehow is controlling a lot of what's happening on Earth. That's eventually would have led up to Snyder's 5-film arc. So these movies would have all had some point, but then the 5-film arc is building it up even more with the main characters. It's crazy to think about what we would have had in the grand scope. We would have had Darkseid and Thanos in 2019 if DC stayed on this schedule. The big bads from each universe clashing with some of the biggest comic book characters of all time on the big screen. And because of many factors with DC and Warner Brothers, things changed. And now we consistently have to read from trades that DC is taking that step in the right direction over and over again, when from the start it felt like we were going in the right direction anyway. But then Joker, a complete standalone, nothing connecting it at all, $1 billion. Kind of becomes a question as a DC fan. What would you prefer? Do you want the continuity of the movies, or do you want solo films building up to possible continuity? If trying to build a universe affects quality, then I don't know if I'm necessarily going to go down that road, because I feel like, as Shane stated, with the Marvel Universe, they're just big commercials for the next one. Those movies lose a lot of substance or any meaning in them whatsoever. I enjoyed Shazam, Birds of Prey not so much, but at the same time, I still wish they did build to something eventually, something more. much more.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely don't want to sacrifice quality. I do feel that at a point with Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey in particular, that if those were connected and you started to see some of the apocalypse elements and the parademons and the boom tube and things like that, and then even with Birds of Prey, you start actually maybe getting the Joker, if he's your main villain and it's linked to Suicide Squad and some of the other movies, I feel like immediately that elevates it to the next level. Just to reiterate what I was saying earlier, you don't need to have these movies that are just kind of throwaway. You can still have, well, I guess Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey could be considered that already, but if you invest in some quality, but you tie them in together and make people wonder what is the next thing that's going to happen. Right now, the way that Disney, agree or disagree, what they want to do is force people to now get their subscription service so that you have to stay up on all of the shows and everything so that you know what's going on for when the next movies come out. It's a little shady, but at the same time, that's what's forcing the viewers to invest their money into movies and the streaming service and so on and so forth. If you can connect your universe, you can still have movies like the Joker. If you want to have these side quest type movies, maybe even the Batman with Robert Pattinson, that's a standalone off to the side, but we still have our joined universe with Batfleck, with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, with Cyborg and Flash, and even Henry Cavill Superman, especially comic book fans who have grown up watching all of these different animated type movies, reading the comics where you have the Joker and Lex Luthor teaming up. Why have we not seen that? Why has that just been maybe a post-credit scene if they decided to continue to building a league of their own? And I'm not talking about the baseball movie.
Are you crying?
No.
Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying.
Why haven't we gotten that yet? And that's one of the most frustrating things as a DC fan. So there's kind of my answer. I think you can have both, but maybe that's just me.
WB and DC continue to ebb and flow. An article in Variety talking about how some of these underperforming movies, just even outside DC, Richard Jewell, Dr. Sleep, The Goldfinch, all underperformed for WB last year. And then Birds of Prey, they kick off the year. As of right now, it's probably going to make its money back, but still not going to probably be the success that they want. Obviously, the studio and AT&T probably look at comic book movies as making much more money than what Birds of Prey is probably going to be capable of, especially after seeing the success of Joker. It does put a lot of butts in the hot seat at WB and DC, so hopefully AT&T doesn't do anything stupid, or maybe they tell them to start making a plan. HBO Max becomes a launching pad for hopefully an expanded DC universe, and then we can get them also in the cinemas as well.
A lot of people ask why. Why treat the customer this way? Why? Because fuck them, that's why.
That'll end this upbeat episode about the DCEU. Let us know in the comments, what do you think? Do you prefer continuity, or do you prefer these movies that are kind of lightly connected with just Easter eggs and no real grand scheme planned ahead? We have a Patreon if you guys want to help us out. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this video, all that stuff. YouTube's algorithm continues to have a stranglehold on our poor little channel.
We're getting our asses kicked, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you to everyone who continues to follow us and support us. We really appreciate it. It helps on a month-to-month basis more than you will ever know. We appreciate it.
In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.